Further ado, we are going to go straight into the battle. I'm not sure who this is actually recorded from, actually.
Yeah, we'll find out when we jump into the match. But if we take a closer look, it looks like it's actually from Eden's perspective. So let's have a little look at the teams here. We've got Toxtricity, Tyranitar, Rillaboom, Dusclops, Cinderace, and Togekiss. Whereas on the opposing side, on Nils' team, we've got Lapras, Rillaboom, Urshifu, Talonflame, Dracovish, and that Incineroar. So again, some really common Fire, Water, Grass calls there on Nils' team, but I really like seeing that Urshifu. It's a Pokemon that, particularly if it's paired up with a Focus Sash, can be detrimental on the field.
Oh, 100%. And given the fact that Nils does have that hyper-offensive team going out on his side, he's got the Lapras, which you would normally think, well, it's not that hyper-offensive. But when paired next to a Tailwind user with pranks or a priority, should I say, like in the form of that Talonflame or a Whimsicott, and if it does have a Life Orb attached onto that Lapras, it just goes ahead, deals huge amounts of damage whilst being insanely fast if its opponent hasn't actually set up Tailwind of its own, and just deals huge damage whilst getting the Auroraville up and going for itself. So it'll be really interesting to see how that kind of pans out, if Nils will try to go ahead for that. But then again, Nils is up against a potential Trick Room in the form of that Dusclops. So it's all about what Pokemon will be led right now.
Yeah, I mean, Nils going down to the last second there to lock in his Pokemon and has opted for Incineroar and Lapras, whereas Eden has gone for the Rillaboom and the Dusclops. So really interesting leads here. You know, you've got the fake out potential there from the Incineroar into that Rillaboom so that Lapras can safely get up the Auroraville with its Gmax Resonance, but then you also have to worry, is the Rillaboom a Gigantamax Pokemon as well? Because if so, then fake out's going to be null and void.
Yeah, 100%, exactly, because the fact that Rillaboom, if it does carry that Miracle Seed, it is such a huge threat against Laprases. Laprases do really not want to see this Pokemon up against it. The Incineroar does help a bit because it all depends now on the item and the build as well of both Pokemon, but logically, more than not, it will be surviving a Gmax move coming out from that Rillaboom. But I mean, in this situation, Incineroar is liking its position. It can just try to pivot and maybe go ahead and get a parting shot off, because the Dusclops will just be wanting to set that Trick Room. And we do actually see the Tyranitar come in for that Rillaboom.
Yeah, Rillaboom feeling pretty exposed in that situation against both a fire and an ice type Pokemon. Tyranitar coming in, changing up the weather as well, going to boost up the special defense on that rock type Pokemon, going to help him out against a potential Gmax Resonance coming in from that Lapras as well. You know, Rillaboom would have been a really good target for that ice type move. So bringing in Tyranitar that's going to be able to take it a lot better is a really wise choice there from Eden. But Nils are going to be going straight onto that Dynamax. It's going to be the Lapras, of course, and I wouldn't be surprised to see Auroraville getting set up on this turn.
Yeah, just like you said, Lou, being able to go ahead and get that Auroraville up going, or maybe making some sort of read, but I still think it's more safe for Nils to get that Auroraville up going, which he goes ahead and he does. He will be targeting that Tyranitar, which was initially that Rillaboom, so good switch out from Eden there, and he will be taking advantage of this Trick Room if the Dusclops does go for it.
Yeah, Auroraville getting set up here and the Life Orb being revealed on that Lapras. Something I love is kind of an offensive Lapras, just makes it so strong. You can see how much damage it did to that Tyranitar. That's also going to have to take some chip from the Bulldoze coming out from that Dusclops, but really wise here, Eden switching into Tyranitar, going for that synergy, boosting up the weakness policy so that Tyranitar can be in a really strong situation going forward. But Nils expertly bringing in that Rillaboom, that can now apply pressure immediately in grassy terrain with something like a Grassy Glide into that Tyranitar, followed up by anything from the Lapras, is going to be able to pick up a KO here. So good thinking from Eden, but just unfortunately Nils seems to be one step ahead.
Yeah, I mean, I could kind of understand the play from Eden's side. He does go for the Bulldoze, but I would have thought maybe try to go for that safe Trick Room, unless you're expecting a taunt coming out from the Incineroar, because if you're able to do that, Tyrantars, especially the weakness policy ones, when they are paired with a Dusclops in their team, they tend to be more of the slower variant. And on Nils' side, the Lapras tend to be max speed, or if not max speed, quite speedy, because they do have that Tailwind support. So I would have expected a Trick Room actually could have been better for Eden's side there, because this Rillaboom is highly threatening on this Tyranitar. Even if it does Dynamax, the Rillaboom is just such a huge threat. It has that priority. So whether regardless if it was in Trick Room or not, it is in a good spot.
Yeah, I think this is where Nils has really covered all his options. You know, if Trick Room had gone up on that Dusclops, like you said, the Rillaboom with the priority in grassy terrain with Grassy Glide will have enabled it to outspeed no matter what was going on there. And as you can see, goes straight into that Tyranitar, picks up the solid KO. So Eden will be down a Pokemon already. And, you know, the weakness policy activation always looks to be so strong, but just with the Rillaboom on the other side of the field, it can be detrimental. Dusclops going to take a big chunk of damage actually from that offensive Lapras, but it's actually going to regain a little bit, goes for that Pain Split, a move I haven't seen in a while that's kind of faded off Dusclops recently. It's good to see it back in action. Not going to deal too much to the Lapras, but I think critically for Dusclops, it enables it to stay on the field, keep that longevity in the game by regaining a little bit of HP.
So I do kind of like Eden's adaptation right now, because he didn't go for the Dynamax. He expected maybe the Tyranitar could be going down that turn. So he just want to go ahead and regain some HP on the Dusclops, extend its longevity. But let's remember, this if a Toxtricity is coming in, which we do see right now, it might actually be faster. It probably will be faster than both of the Rillaboom and the Lapras, thanks to that Bulldoze. So this could be the scenario where Eden's trying to take advantage of the board position. Right now, the Toxtricity will more than likely be the fastest thing on play, so it will be able to not only delay and outlast that Dynamax from the Lapras, because it could easily go for a Protect as well and maybe guarantee stronger damage output for the following turn. But I think it's good. Dusclops could be tricky here as well, so it could even go for an ally switch and have some shenanigans, mind games going on, so you never know. But being able to position this Toxtricity, I think, is really key for Eden. So good adaptation, I'd say, in comparison to turn 1.
Yeah, still no Dynamax coming out here from Eden, going to be protecting that Toxtricity, just saving it in a defensive play for this turn, as Rillaboom does go for that Grassy Glide, but has targeted down into that Dusclops that is vulnerable and exposed. Lapras going to follow up with a Max Geyser, wants to change up the weather a little bit, make it more advantageous for that Lapras outside of its Dynamax, so that those Hydro Pumps will be doing even more damage in the rain. And it also helps protect up that Rillaboom from any fire type potential on Eden's side of the field. However, Dusclops able to hang on, is going to be able to go for a Night Shade, but it looks like time is running out here for the Dusclops. You know, living only on 5 HP, or, you know, Slither more after the grassy terrain. One more move is going to be able to pick up a KO against it, but in all honesty, the way that Eden's playing at the moment, if you're Nils, I wouldn't be worried about this Dusclops.
Yeah, I mean, because in this point right now, Nils had just opted, he was probably thinking the fact that he recognized that Toxtricity was going to be the fastest thing on the field, but also that it would more than likely enjoy its position more when that Lapras has lost its Dynamax capability. So maybe he played on that situation there. Eden does have that Rillaboom in the back, so he could guarantee huge amounts of damage onto the Lapras now that the Dynamax is over. So right now, he's just kind of like feigning his time with what he can do. Remember, Eden, he has that trigger that he can pull for the Dynamax right now whenever he so chooses. So it's just all about when to do it and the correct amount, so you can try to push yourself forward with regards to this game so far in momentum. And we're actually going to see the Dusclops switch out for that Rillaboom.
Yeah, even just removing the Dusclops from play, it kind of was sitting there not doing too much in terms of offensive pressure and strategy for him. To bring in the Rillaboom, to make use of this grassy terrain as well, is going to be able to help him out against this opposing Lapras. But Eden actually going for the Dynamax here, and it is going to be that Gmax Toxtricity, a Pokemon that is underused at the moment, but with its Gmax Stun Shock can always cause a few problems on the field by either paralyzing or poisoning the opposing Pokemon if the roll of the dice does go in his direction. Going to be Grassy Glide coming out from that Rillaboom, of course, priority going straight into the opposing Rillaboom and actually doing a good chunk of damage, a solid third, even though it is not super effective, or not effective at all. Gmax Stun Shock though coming out into that Lapras, no longer protected by its Dynamax for the extra HP, and I think that picked up a really solid KO there, while also poisoning the Rillaboom. So Rillaboom has a counter now stepped onto it, as Lapras will be KO'd. It does give Nils the opportunity though to bring in a Pokemon from the back and apply a little bit more pressure, but Toxtricity looking to be really, really strong in this current situation.
I love Eden's play that turn, because he was sure you would think that maybe the Dusclops can just go down to a Grassy Glide. That's not an issue, but he wants to be able to once again pivot that Rillaboom, maybe in future turns as well, maybe that Fake Out as well as Grass Terrain. So what he did there, he expected the Grassy Glide and he knew the Rillaboom would take it, but at this point right now, there is no longer any Dynamax on Nils' side. So Eden is free to go ahead, get a Fake Out from his Rillaboom, as well as threaten huge amounts amounts of damage, as well as potential boosts on that Toxtricity, being able to take advantage of the situation. Right now, it is the fastest thing. It all depends on what Nils does have in the back. It could be that Incineroar once again, but I'm very curious to see what last fourth Pokemon. Oh, actually, it might be that Rillaboom. Oh, wait, it is the Rillaboom. It's Rillaboom, Lapras, it's the Incineroar, but we haven't seen the last Pokemon, of course. So he does bring the Incineroar in. It will be getting an attack drop onto Eden's Rillaboom, and maybe threatening a fake out situation, but Rillabooms tend to be a bit more faster when it comes to fake outs against Incineroars.
Yeah, I mean, this is a situation. Toxtricity's typing is really, really nice here with the electric and poison type. Kind of threaten a lot of pressure onto that Rillaboom with something like a Max Ooze. But Rillaboom on both sides here, looking to be a little bit vulnerable here. The Rillaboom on Eden's side has, of course, taken that Intimidate, and it can be pressured by something like a Flare Blitz coming out from that opposing Incineroar as well, and not being able to deal out as much offensive pressure as we know Rillaboom is capable of. I wouldn't be surprised to see Eden maybe go for a switch here, just reset that Intimidate, sack the Dusclops, unfortunately, for that Ghost-type Pokemon, but it will be necessary to enable Rillaboom to come back in later in the game and put Eden in a stronger position going forward.
Yeah, 100%. So Eden looking to try and take advantage of his situation. He actually switches out the Rillaboom for the Dusclops. He does want to regain that fake out pressure for a ladder turn, whilst also revealing the Fiki Berry on the Incineroar and the Choice Band on the Rillaboom. So this Rillaboom has been dealing so much damage. It makes a lot of sense right now because it's just been going for the same move, but it's been dealing huge amounts of damage. Max Ooze does come out from that Toxtricity, goes into the Rillaboom, and actually picks up the one-hit KO after that chip, of course. The poison might have helped right there too, and does boost its special attack by 1 stage.
Yeah, really nice here from Eden. You know, that's good information as well, scouting out its Choice Band, because, you know, in grassy terrain, being able to have that priority often means that your item is kind of hidden, I suppose, a little bit. It's always a little bit suspect if you don't know what it is because of the speed, just throwing things out. But really, really interesting to know that. Being able to go for that Max Ooze, pick up the KO is just really critical. But of course, Passing Shot has now gone on to that Toxtricity, so we'll be back to neutral in this situation. Nils going to be able to bring Incineroar into the back and bring it forward once again. And the thing is that there's one more turn left of this Dynamax, so the fake out isn't going to be able to be utilized. It's definitely a bit of a tricky situation here for Nils, but Eden, being so limited in his Pokemon choices here, does have to worry about how he's going to be able to pick up KOs with this Toxicity. But being able to bring his Rillaboom in to apply a lot of pressure is also going to be helpful for him.
Oh, 100%. And just, you can see that huge amount of damage output coming out from that Toxtricity, thanks to the Life Orb as well. So Toxtricity is in a really good spot. It could be max speed as well, so it all depends on what Nils' Pokemon are at with trained. And we are going to see that Dracovish actually come in, which will be really interesting because they tend to be either Choice Scarf or Choice Band, as well as Mystic Water variants that we have seen. But, of course, the Rillaboom has the Choice Band, so this could be a Choice Scarf Dracovish.
Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if it was a Choice Scarf variant. And of course, having set up the Rain with the Lapras puts this Dracovish in such a strong position. Rillaboom, of course, will come back in for Eden, but as will the Incineroar for Nils here. So that Intimidate that was reset on the Rillaboom will be set up once again. Rillaboom, of course, can apply a lot of pressure to that Dracovish. Aurora Veil has gone away now as well, so it is going to be a little bit more vulnerable to something like a Grassy Glide. But you can see the item choice on there of Eden's as well with that Soul Vest. It's not going to be the Choice Band variant of Nils' side. So with potentially that Intimidate, Dracovish is going to be able to hang around and can deal out so much damage with Officious Rend. Even though it wouldn't be going first thanks to the terrain that's going to be reset up now by that Rillaboom, it's still in the rain going to be so powerful.
Oh, 100%. And this is going to be really interesting to see the fake-out interactions between both the Rillaboom and the Incineroar if they do opt to go for it, because normally you would expect maybe the Rillaboom to be naturally a bit more faster, but given the terrain wars that we have been seeing from the interactions between the female Indeedee and the Rillabooms, they tend to try to run a bit more slower. So it all comes down to which one's faster. If Eden can go ahead and get a safe fake-out onto the Dracovish whilst threatening with the Toxtricity and potential paralysis and poisons, as well as damage output, because there is no fake out that is going to stop this G-Max Toxtricity going on to a spree, hopefully for Eden's side.
Yeah, G-Max Toxtricity with the side effects of G-Max Stun Shock is a really interesting Pokemon. Like, you know, there's so much that can go right, so much that can go wrong, and it really does come to the rolls of the dice here. But it really does play to Eden's advantage at the end of the day. If you can maybe get a paralysis on the Dracovish, slow it down, or even stop it moving entirely, that can be the opportunity that Toxtricity needs in order to pick up the KO here for Eden. Rillaboom, though, going to go for the fake out on Eden's side, straight into that Dracovish, and no big damage in the rain coming out here at all. Incineroar, of course, going to go back, do a little bit of chip. That maybe would have been better for Nils to go for something like a Flare Blitz, just try and get some damage, even though it's raining, just get rid of this Rillaboom. Stunshot though coming out once again into the Dracovish and picks up a solid KO. Oh my goodness, losing that Aurora Veil has been devastating for Nils.
Yeah, definitely devastating, whilst also paralyzing that Incineroar. So, like you said, Lou, I think that Nils should have maybe expected that fake out. Maybe he was just hoping, of course, that the Rillaboom is going to be the slower variant, and maybe his Incineroar is actually quite fast and pacey. But no, unfortunately for Nils, that's not going to turn out that way for him. He will lose that Dracovish. That Incineroar is now paralyzed. This Toxtricity is at neutral, so it will be dealing good amounts of damage. It all depends on what this Rillaboom will do, because if it doesn't have a neutral way to at least attack this Incineroar, the rain is up, and of course the Incineroar should be able to 1v1 a Rillaboom, as long as it doesn't have coverage. But I think this will all be played out and dependent on, first of all, what kind of damage will this Toxtricity do on the Incineroar? Will it be able to proc a potential berry, which I think was revealed to have a figure berry before, so I think it's all about, from Eden's side, managing how much damage he's able to inflict onto this Incineroar, because being able to put it within a certain range, and maybe if the Incineroar can somehow get rid of this Toxtricity, it could be good, but it is looking like advantage for Eden.
Yeah, even something like a parting shot instead of that fake out would have just neutralized some of the damage Toxtricity can deal out. As you can see with the live orb, it is devastating the amount it can do, and one more of those will be able to pick up the KO against Incineroar, followed up by something with this Rillaboom as well, which goes for the Wood Hammer in the grassy terrain. Even though it's not going to be super effective, you can see how much it does there, and paired up with another one of those overdrives, Incineroar is going to be in a precarious position. I know it got paralyzed there, but I feel like that actually really wasn't anything critical in this turn. And actually, as much as we talked about Toxtricity, yes, he's managed to get the paralysis, managed to get the poison on the Rillaboom as well. I actually feel like those side effects have not contributed to this match too much. It's just been the sheer power of that Toxtricity rather than the side effects.
Yeah, I completely agree. I just think that the Toxtricity Eden was able to place the Toxtricity in such a good position. The fact that Nils didn't have Tailwind support this time around just goes to show that Eden was able to take advantage of that and just make sure he gets rid of the threats. He outlasts Nils' Dynamax and just goes ahead and starts picking up these KOs with this insanely powerful Toxtricity, which, sure, like you said, it does have that side effect of the status ailments being inflicted onto its opponent's Pokemon, but in this case, it doesn't look like it's mattered as much. Maybe if the Rillaboom in the previous turns on Nils' side was a Salt Fest and the Poison came into play with a bit of the recovery of the Grass Terrain, but I don't think so. And we are going to be seeing that Toxtricity just go ahead and seal game 1 of this best of 3 for Eden, giving him a lot of momentum going into game 2.
Yeah, 100%. And if you're Nils, you really have to think about how you're going to come around against that Toxtricity. You know, normally we see something like a Max Quake coming out from Pokemon in order to pick up a solid KO against it. But looking at Nils' team, he doesn't seem to have the utility to be able to do that. He doesn't have any solid ground type users in there. So unless he's got a coverage move on one of his Pokemon, not going to be one you're going to see on Lapras, then Toxtricity is going to be a problem to deal with. And that's where you have to make those decisions. Do you want to go for your Gigantamax Lapras so that you can get up your Aurora Veil and deal out some big damage? We've seen the offensive pressure that Lapras can give, or do you want to try and find a way to remove that Toxtricity quickly from the field? And depending on maybe some of the synergy, playing around with maybe some more Grassy Glides or something to pick up KOs against the partner Pokemon, because you can't ignore them either. You know, Eden's got some really powerful Pokemon on his side. That Rillaboom put in so much work. So if you're constantly targeting down the Toxtricity, the Rillaboom's going to be able to pick up damage while you leave it alone.
Yeah, I think from Nils' side, it's all about reading what kind of lead and strategy Eden's going to go for, because he might have been anticipating perhaps a Trick Room mode coming out from Eden. Eden did have the Dusclops, but he didn't actually go for Trick Room. He just went for that very sneaky Bulldoze, which was able to, in case the Rillaboom or the Lapras were able to outspeed the Toxtricity, and the Toxtricity wasn't actually max speed, that could have come into play. And Eden was just able to position himself very, very well. So I think from Nils' side, he might maybe have to bring a Tailwind mode, or perhaps an Urshifu. Depends on which Urshifu it is, if it is that single strike or rapid strike. But then it's always fearing that Togekiss. If that Togekiss comes from Eden's side, paired up with the Dustclops, he can just go ahead and get a Trick Room up. The Tyranitar could be in the back and be able to just capitalize off of that momentum. So it's a bit of a tricky situation. I really like the way that Eden's gone ahead and built his team. Nils as well. I do really like his team, but it's the fact that it's got such hyper offense paired up to it. It works as long as your opponent doesn't have solid answers to it. So being able to force yourself into a mind game when you have pretty much a one mode, it's not exactly a one mode team. It is hyper offense. It has different parts to it. We haven't seen all moves revealed because there could be taunts on multiple Pokemon on Nils' side, but it's all about what he anticipates and wants to go in to game 2 with.
I mean, it's when you look at Nils' team, it's the glaring weakness. You've got Toxtricity there, you know. The electric moves can hit the Dracovish, the Talonflame, the Lapras, and then the poison type move is going to be really good against that Rillaboom as well. And you saw just the damage it did to the Incineroar as well, and Urshifu could be pretty vulnerable as well to any damage that's going to come out from it. And that's, you know, just one Pokemon on Eden's team. There's 3 others that you've got to contend with as well, right? But I think the one thing I really liked about Eden's team is the kind of dual modes that he had going on and managed to showcase in that game 1. You know, you have the Dustclops and the Tyranitar. That was a really cool tech that was going on. We've seen it many times, and it didn't actually work for him. And that can be sometimes the pivotal point of a game where your one strategy fails, you lose a key Pokemon, and then you're kind of like a sitting duck, really vulnerable to your opponent's hyper offense team. But he was actually able to rein it back in and go, hey, I've got a plan B. Let's bring in this Toxtricity and let's, you know, cause some havoc on the field. That's exactly what he was able to do. And I think being able to be that flexible in a meta as diverse as it is at the moment, while also going up against a hyper offensive team, really is a credit to Eden and his team. And I'm going to be very curious to see how Nils is going to come back from this.
Oh, 100%. I think the fact that Eden was able to take advantage as well of Dynamaxing later after Nils' Dynamax was completed, was able to bring some good momentum into his play. And we are going to be seeing from Nils' side that Urshifu single strike paired up with the Lapras, whilst on Eden's side we're going to see a change as well, bringing that Cinderace and the Toxtricity straight off the bat in game 2.
I like this change from Nils, to be honest. You've still got your Lapras, going to be applying a lot of pressure, being able to get out that Aurora Veil. But Urshifu, with its critical hits, can be really strong here, particularly against that Toxtricity, to try and just deal out some big damage and start weakening it as quickly as possible. Could be what Nils needs to do in order to break the momentum. Again, though, on Eden's side, that Toxtricity going to be applying a lot of pressure to the Lapras of your Nils. You know it's going to be vulnerable, and you do not want to Gigantamax your Pokemon and lose it in that first turn, because then you are so on the back foot. Cinderace as well, that could be a Dynamax Pokemon of choice. So Eden's kind of playing a few mind games here.
Yeah, 100%. And being able to just launch a strong hit that comes out first before the Lapras will prove to be a key. As we do see the Dynamax first come out from Eden's side, it's going to be interesting to see if we do see the Lapras Dynamax as well, because this is probably going to be the Toxtricity, which it is. If the Lapras does go next and does Dynamax, this confirms that the Toxtricity will more than likely be faster with regards to its speed tiering. Cinderace is just there maybe to try to better position and assist that Toxtricity. We will be seeing the Gigantamax Lapras coming out from Nils' side now too. So this is all about what Pokemon has gone for who should I say targeted, because being able to deal huge amounts of damage with a stun shot, G-Max stun shot, is so key. It will be moving first. Does this Cinderace double up into it? Oh, the high jump kick actually comes out from the Cinderace, does switch it into the fighting type, goes for the Lapras, deals huge amounts of damage. Wicked Blow does go into the Toxtricity, so not being able to pick up the KO, of course, thanks to that Gigantamax form. G-Max stun shot comes out. Ladies and gents, it actually goes into the Urshifu, so maybe scared of a max guard on that Lapras and just opting to bring that Urshifu down to its Focus Sash whilst paralyzing the Lapras.
Yeah, really nice play here. Managed to get the double paralysis. Probably really wanted the poison on that Urshifu though, just to go through that Focus Sash, remove it from field. But critically, as you can see, that Lapras has been paralyzed in game 2 in comparison to game 1. These secondary effects are really working out here for Eden. Being able to stop that Lapras from setting up the Aurora Veil, meaning that it's going to be super vulnerable going into this next turn. You know, we saw how slow it moved there already. It was already the slowest on the field, and Cinderace can pick up so much damage with another high jump kick, or Toxtricity can just sort of do anything to it with electric type power, and Lapras will be removed. Urshifu, though, of course, is known to be carrying something like Sucker Punch. That's something that can still go out for some good chip damage, but honestly, with Urshifu at the low health that it's at the moment, it's going to be really vulnerable again to anything, and Eden really is so strong in the driving seat right now.
Oh, he really is, because he's just got safe plays galore right in front of him right now. He doesn't mind. He will be trying to pick up any sort of KOs, and if there's any Pokemon switching in, he will be picking up those KOs as well. As we do see the Lapras successfully get a max guard going for itself, as the Cinderace does opt for Sucker Punch into the Urshifu in case of that Sucker Punch, that opposing Sucker Punch, like you mentioned, Lou, that could have been potentially coming out to try to negate that paralysis situation going. G-Max Stun Shock does go into that max guard. This is looking so good for Eden. Nils is going to have to bring in a very good Pokemon right now to try to avert his current situation.
Yeah, I mean, that was such a simple turn there for Eden. Go for the Sucker Punch onto the opposing Urshifu, remove it from the field. Even if Nils had switched in that situation, you're still Cinderace, you're still super fast, you'll be able to deal with that Pokemon when it comes in. And then Toxtricity going for the Electric type move into the Lapras, of course, would have been able to pick up the KO. But even though Lapras has gone for that max guard, it's still vulnerable this turn. All it's really done is burn one turn of the Dynamax. Dracovish, however, is a really good choice in here for Nils. Yes, the rain isn't up in this particular game, but something like a Fishious Ren going into that Toxtricity is still going to deal decent damage, particularly if it goes first. If it is a Choice Scarf variant, will have double damage, then that's something that Eden does have to watch out for. But against Cinderace, it can just go down into that Lapras and use that coverage where the Toxtricity can go for something like the G-Max Stun Shock again and go into Dracovish.
True, and actually pick up the KO as we did see it do in the previous game. But this time round, it is going to actually opt for a max guard as a Fishious Ren does actually go into it. So well played from Eden. The real question is, does this high jump kick land? Oh, and it does, and it will be able to actually pick up the KO, rendering the Dynamax, Gigantamax Lapras on Nils' side completely useless these two turns. It was just a body bag, unfortunately, and it was able to go down without actually getting a move off, thanks to that very crucial paralysis, that same turn paralysis, which is such a small chance to get, but thankfully for Eden's side, he was able to go ahead and do it.
Yeah, that was really unfortunate for Nils there. Your Dynamax or Gigantamax Pokemon didn't get a single move off. Max Guard, you know, that's not really going to count here. It's not dealing any offensive pressure. Didn't manage to do anything in this game, and he has now lost his Dynamax Pokemon from play, whereas Eden has still got his Toxtricity. A little bit, you know, worn down. It's taken a little chip of damage, but otherwise really really healthy in this situation, still applying a lot of pressure. Cinderace as well. It's not something that I know the captain of UK is famous for, hitting those high jump kicks, but it looks like his teammates are, however, channeling the good luck when it comes to those, managing to get two of them onto that Lapras. But Rillaboom coming in now as well, getting that grassy terrain up, is going to be able to apply a lot of pressure with something like a Grassy Glide, but Toxtricity, I'd say, is still really formidable here.
Yeah, 100%. So you are going to be seeing the fake out capability coming up from the Rillaboom as well, if it does so opt to go for it. But like you said, Lou, I just think that Eden is in a phenomenal situation. As long as he's able to get rid of that Dracovish, which of course does threaten huge amounts of damage. If it is Choice Scarf, it will be moving first, unless there is a Sucker Punch coming up from that Cinderace, which could help to mitigate any damage output from that Dracovish, as Fishious Ren does, of course, double as long as it is the first one to strike. So the Toxtricity in this situation will be wanting to maybe target into the Rillaboom, try to get rid of it, but we have to remember Eden still has a potential other mode in the back. These are still his first two Pokemon that came out, as we see a Sucker Punch coming out from that Cinderace into the Dracovish. Wow, Grassy Glide actually picked up that straight KO as well, Lou.
Yeah, we've got to remember that as a choice band Rillaboom, that is going to be dealing some big power. Toxtricity not able to survive the Fishious Ren despite Sucker Punch, meaning they will be at its normal base P for this turn. You can just see the damage that Dracovish and Rillaboom in combination together can deal out. And Eden suddenly down to his last two remaining Pokemon. You can see the choices here again. You know, Rillaboom in that terrain will have that priority and be able to threaten the Dracovish. Of course, Aurora Veil didn't manage to get up by the Lapras in this game, so Dracovish is a little bit more vulnerable. And Togekiss being able to go for something like the redirection with Follow Me will be able to protect that Rillaboom. If Dracovish is, of course, the Choice Scarf variant, then it can't protect in this situation. That's something that Rillaboom on Eden's side is going to be able to utilize.
Oh, 100%. And we're potentially looking at a double-choiced Pokemon. Last two Pokemon from Nils' side. Of course, the choice band is definitely confirmed. So it's just dealing huge amounts of damage. This Togekiss on Eden's side will be wanting to try to redirect any damage. But Eden's Rillaboom won't be dealing as much damage as it would have liked. Sure, it will be able to on the Dracovish, but it needs to have a coverage move for the opposing Rillaboom. As we do see a Grassy Glide come out and no Follow Me.
Yeah, Grassy Glide coming out. Dracovish is a double up into that Togekiss, knowing that it can be problematic with redirection, with critical hits, maybe even something like a Yawn to put the Pokemon to sleep. Rillaboom, however, going to take use of this, follows up with a powerful Wood Hammer in the terrain, picks up the solid KO against the Dracovish, and we're now in this situation where we've got Rillaboom versus Rillaboom. We know one of them is choice bound, we know one of them is not going to be intimidated. There's no Incineroars jumping in this situation. When it comes down to these two Pokemon, I feel like the choice band variant is going to have the advantage.
Oh yeah, this is going to be a brutal battle to which gorilla can be able to shrug out the win between these two kings of the match, of the battlefield. And Neil's been locked into a choice band Grassy Glide. At first it looks pretty good because it's so strong as well. Of course, Eden's side, the Wood Hammer, it does have that higher base power compared to the Grassy Glide, but it is not actually powered by a choice band. So it'll be very interesting to see how this actually pans out, given the fact that every single bit of HP is going to be so important, as we do see Nils' Rillaboom go for that huge damage in the form of that Grassy Glide, and the Rillaboom on Eden's side as well, dealing good amounts of damage thanks to that U-turn coverage it actually has.
Yeah, that does show the benefit of not being choiced. The Assault Vest isn't going to help Maho against physical opponent, but not being locked into a move like Grassy Glide that isn't going to be dealing effective damage, you can then switch up your moves and go for that U-turn, and that will be dealing decent damage to the Rillaboom. It actually looked pretty even there on the calculations, so we'll just have to see through these turns. Maybe a critical hit could sway things a different way. It looks like one more Grassy Glide might pick up the KO against Eden's here, but so will one more U-turn. So this is where things get really interesting at this stage. The HP being regained a little bit by the grassy terrain. Again, the Grassy Glide on one Rillaboom onto another, could that potentially pick up the KO? I'd say the U-turn's still safer.
Yeah, it's still safer, but I think because of this grass terrain still being in play, it will be able to get that KO for Nils. I think if grass terrain was to end one turn earlier, and if Eden's Rillaboom was faster, it would have actually been able to pinch that set off for Eden. But no, we didn't see the choice band Rillaboom just go ahead, glide on the grass up until it gets that game 2 win, and try to push for that game 3 now.
Yeah, that was such a close end game there as well. And, you know, Eden played so well in that beginning of the game, you know, stopping the Lapras in its tracks, being able to utilize the Toxtricity really well. But I think one of the problems it had was that turn with the Dracovish and the Rillaboom, and not being able to have the speed advantage just enabled Nils to get back into that game. You know, the speedy Dracovish picking up a KO, with the Grassy Glide picking up a KO. The Grassy Glide you can't work around. If there's terrain, you know, that's always going to have that priority. But if there was a way for Eden to be able to boost up his speed somehow, that could really change things for him. And I know he quite likes the Dynamax at Toxtricity, but Cinderace could always be an option as well, going for something like a Max Airstream. Just enabling his Pokemon to have that advantage going forward can enable him to keep that momentum throughout the game. And Toxtricity, although we love seeing it Dynamax, it can still pack a really heavy punch out of Dynamax.
Yeah, 100%. It definitely does. We saw that Overdrive with how much damage it actually dealt. Single target, life orb boosted as well. But I think it's like you said, Lou, it's the scenario where Eden was up against a potentially choice scarfed Dracovish, as well as that choice banded Rillaboom, and it didn't have a lot of options to go out for himself. He didn't follow me actually during that turn, so I'm not sure if that could have helped the situation, because maybe it would have redirected. But nevertheless, it was still
double targeted.
It was double targeted. Yeah, so either way it was going down. So well played from Eden, maybe expecting that. But I think it's just so much damage output was able to come out from Nils' side and corner Eden with his Rillaboom, which I felt like if that Rillaboom did have Protect and it wasn't an Assault Vest variant, it could have actually been able to maybe clinch out the win for him, as long as he got rid of that grass terrain, which of course Grassy Glide, not only is it boosted by the grass terrain by 1.3, it is also taking advantage and transforms into a priority move. So I think that was the only thing that was the trouble there. Of course, like you said, I think it's all about how that Toxtricity is going to be utilized in this game 3, and how Eden can try to change it up, because he had so much momentum going for him up until that turning point in game 2 where Nils was able to take complete advantage.
Oh, this is where Nils can really shake things up a little bit, bringing the Talonflame paired up with the Lapras. Talonflame, of course, well known for being able to set up that priority Tailwind or deal some big damage to a grass type, which is what Eden has gone out with here. Toxtricity and the Rillaboom on the field. I really like this because in game 2, he was able to work around the Lapras by paralyzing it, but of course that is a roll of the dice. You may not even paralyze the Pokemon, for example. So being able to bring 2 Pokemon that can apply a lot of pressure to that Lapras is another way to deal with it.
Oh, 100%. And given the scenario right now that we haven't seen the Dustlops coming out yet, or at least we didn't see it in game 2. Maybe Nils was trying to take advantage of maybe thinking, I don't think Eden's actually going to try to go for that Dustlops mode. He might have it in the back, but I don't think he's going to lead it. And he was able to actually take advantage, full-blown, leading that Talonflame and Lapras. Lapras does, of course, have the threat of going and Gigantamaxing. That Talonflame can get the Tailwind up going as well, so it's all about if we actually see a Fake Out from this Rillaboom or a Dynamax.
Yeah, of course, Fake Out going into that Talonflame as well will break the Gale Wings. That could be really useful going forward in this game. But Eden going straight on the offensive. You know, he actually kind of kept the Toxtricity in game 1 till the end game, but here we are, game 3, turn 1, going straight for that Dynamax, applying a lot of offensive pressure to both the opposing Pokemon with an electric type move, and it'll be interesting to see who his target is. You can always worry about the Lapras going for a max guard in this situation, whereas if you go for something like a Fake Up and double up into that Talonflame, not only do you pick up the KO, but you then roll the dice with a 50% chance to either paralyze or poison that Lapras. So definitely going to be an interesting play here for Eden, depending on his targeting and whether Nils will stick with an offensive or defensive approach. Talonflame actually going to go for the Protect here, so will not fall victim to something like that Fake Out, which has been the targeting there from Eden going straight into that Pokemon. As Toxtricity goes for that G-Max Stun Shock. Now, who is it targeted down into?
Oh, it actually targets into that Talonflame, deals huge amounts of damage, even hidden behind the Protect. It is normally 1/4 of the normal damage it would have done, whilst getting that crucial Lapras paralyzed. Double paralysis once again. Eden, that Toxtricity doing so much work! So much work! The Lapras was fully paralyzed yet again. Unfortunately for Nils, he didn't opt for a max guard, but he got punished really hard right there.
Oh, this Toxtricity giving us everything in the European Cup right now. Doing so well. We haven't seen many poisons. Paralysis is definitely what it's going for, but that's what it needs to in this situation. It is stopping Nils once again from getting up that Aurora Veil. Now, yes, it looks a little bit precarious, but Lapras is still at full HP here, so Rillaboom and Toxtricity need to make sure that they stop this Lapras in its tracks. It's super duper slow right now. Gale Wings has been broken on Talonflame. They need to utilize this opportunity while they have the speed advantage and pick up some strong KOs. Of course, there's no way to then reset that if the Pokemon in the back come forward, but right now you have to stop Tailwind going up on that Talonflame, and you have to stop Aurora Veil going up on the Lapras. So Toxtricity going nice and speedy, targeting straight into that Talonflame once again, removing it from the field before we even get to see it do anything. And of course, Talonflame would have been able to apply a lot of pressure to the Rillaboom, so Eden wisely protecting his partner Pokemon that put in so much work previously for him. Goes for the U-turn, wants to protect it from being the potential target of that G-Max Resonance. Wouldn't be surprised to see that, you know, Nils knows that Rillaboom is a threat. Brings in the Cinderace.
Yeah, that's a fair play from Eden. He could have just gone for the raw damage, but he opted for the U-turn instead for that pivoting situation, as Nils is going to finally get a move off with that Lapras, being able to deal huge chunk of damage onto that Cinderace, which of course does resist. Let's remember the Lapras is boosted by a Life Orb. Goes ahead, gets the Aurora Veil up and going for itself, but it is so slow and has the chance of fully paralyzing once again that Talonflame being completely muted, or should I say defeathered in this situation, given the fact that it just couldn't do anything. It couldn't even get Tailwind going for itself and its teammates. It couldn't get any damage. It was a sitting flying duck.
Yeah, it certainly was. But now, again, Nils has the opportunity to bring in something in the back. And if he wants to bring in something speedy like that Dracovish, or even bring in his own Rillaboom to apply some pressure, this is the opportunity to do it. Eden seems to be really ignoring that Lapras as well, maybe trying to wait for it to be out of its Dynamax stage without that additional HP to be able to target it down. But you do have to worry. Nils has done the one thing that Lapras sets out to do, and he's got that Aurora Veil up, so he needs to calculate that into his damage rolls going into these next couple of turns.
Oh, 100%. And we do see from Eden's side, he does have the Cinderace and the Toxtricity going. So on Nils' side, he doesn't have Tailwind support no longer. He could be bringing the Fake Out user, which we are going to see one of them in the form of that Rillaboom. will be trying to go ahead, maybe get a fake out onto the Cinderace, but it's just the fact that Eden, even if the Aurora Veil is up and going, it's still such a huge threat onto this Lapras, given the fact that it will still deal huge amounts of damage, as well as potentially afflict the Rillaboom with either a paralysis status or a poison. So it's not looking too bad for Nils. I mean, that turn 1 was horrendous for Nils. I mean, it could not have gone worse, honestly, because Gale Winds was actually muted because Eden was able to take advantage of directing his attack through the Protect into that Talonflame. I
mean, if you're Eden here, who do you target? Do you go into the Rillaboom for max poison damage, or do you want to go into the Lapras with the electric type move? Grassy Glide though comes out once again from the Rillaboom, picks up the KO against Cinderace as the Toxtricity does indeed target down that Lapras. Finally going to deal some good damage, but the Aurora Veil really putting in some work. Stun Shock not going to be able to pick up a KO here, but does get the paralysis onto that Rillaboom. So once again, going to be slowing down these Pokemon and trying to stop Rillaboom moving at all in its priority bracket. Lapras breaking through though, it's doing much better than it did in game 2. Going into that Toxtricity and going to set up the rain, which if there is the Dracovish in the back is going to be pretty detrimental for Eden going forward. You know, Fishious Rent in the rain, there's not a lot of things that can stop them, and Toxtricity, I believe now coming to the end of its Dynamax, isn't going to be able to afflict any paralysis or poison going forward into this game. So the Dracovish is going to be a force to be reckoned with.
Oh, 100%. I think that the Toxtricity, though, from its side of the field, it's definitely put in so much work that even if it does lose the Dynamax right now, it's just going to be able to potentially threaten with Sludge Bombs or even Overdrives, as we do see Eden go ahead and bring in that Rillaboom from his own side, as well as both Pokemon do lose their Dynamax form, the Toxtricity and Lapras. So the paralysis could be really huge, because not only does it halve the speed of both the Pokemon, it also gives them a chance to get fully paralyzed, which we're no stranger to in this current set, to be completely honest. So like you said, Lou, I think Dracovish in the back could deal huge amounts of damage. It's a big threat, especially with that rain up and going, but I still think from Eden's side, at least, he's got a lot of momentum going for him. The Aurora Veil is up, so the Toxtricity won't be picking up a one-hit KO onto this Rillaboom, but there could be potential double-ups and maybe a Protect from the Lapras, because I think Lapras in this situation just wants to try to... I'm not sure, because it's just in such a bad position. It either protects itself or it just goes down and waits for the Dracovish to come in, as we do see the Toxtricity switch out for the Togekiss on Eden's side.
Yeah, Toxtricity going to be a really big target there for that Rillaboom. But Rillaboom on Eden's side, moving first, going straight into that Lapras, picks up the solid KO and removes it from the field. But again, you have to worry what is in the back there for Nils. Rillaboom breaking through that paralysis, goes to that Grassy Glide into the Togekiss. With the Choice Band being unchecked here, I think that easily would have picked up the KO against the Toxtricity with the remaining HP that they had. So really good here of Eden to preserve it, bring in the Togekiss that can actually counter the Rillaboom relatively well. You know, going for something like... the flinches here with Air Slash could be really critical, you know, trying to get some of those, you know, power flinches on play. Maybe if, you know, the terrain goes away and the Grassy Glides are going to be a little less prioritized.
Oh, 100%. And it's just about Eden managing his board position right now, because he doesn't have a need to bring that to leave that Toxtricity in and just let it go down. Togekiss is naturally going to be resisting any Grassy Glides, even though the Rillaboom did deal huge amounts of damage thanks to the Choice Band, thanks to the grass terrain, and thanks to the fact that it is so strong offensively and physically, should I say. But being able to bring that redirection in right now and maybe deal some damage with the Rillaboom, pick up a KO on the Dracovish if it can, will be huge. But the Dracovish is still protected by the Aurora Veil, so I'm not sure about the specific damage calcs based on each of the Pokemon, but I'm not sure. I think Nils can still be in this with a chance, to be honest. He's still in with a shot. It just all depends on what Eden decides to go for. If he has a Protect on the Togekiss, if he allows a double up into it once again, or if he tries to preserve the Togekiss for later on.
Well, you know the Rillaboom's going to be going for Grassy Glides on Nils' side. That's guaranteed at this stage. It's just going to come down to where the targeting is. Eden going to switch out, bring that Toxtricity back into play, maybe hoping that, as in game 2, the Togekiss will be the target that Nils goes for and tries to go for that double up. Goes straight into the Rillaboom actually with the Grassy Glide, still does a good chunk of damage as Dracovish follows up with the Fishious Rend. That double up does allow Nils to be able to KO that Rillaboom, which was going to be such an offensive threat to that Dracovish, and now you're in that precarious situation if you're Eden, where you're going to bring a Togekiss back in. Yes, sure, you can redirect, but you will be going down at the end of that turn from a double up from both these Pokemon. And Toxtricity needs to be able to find a way to pick up KOs somehow against both of these Pokemon. Aurora Veil, I think, is still up. Grassy terrain has left the field though, so the Grassy Glides won't be dealing as much damage and will be a lot slower on the field now as it doesn't have priority and Rillaboom is paralyzed. But I think if Toxtricity's not able to remove Dracovish from play and Rillaboom doesn't get paralyzed, then Nils is going to be in a really commanding position.
Oh, 100%. I think the fact that this Dracovish is threatening so much right now to actually allow a sweep from Nils, a reverse sweep that you would really not expect given what the board play has been the past couple of turns, is so huge. And it just goes to show it's all about pacing and positioning in these kind of games. You can literally win the game as long as the correct piece is in the correct position. And that's what we're seeing right now. So Eden's going to try to go ahead and protect actually his Toxtricity, maybe preserving it in anticipation of a Vicious Rend into it, but no, the Vicious Rend actually goes into the Togekiss, picks up the one-hit KO, and this is looking like it's a reverse sweep indeed from Nils, as this Dracovish does outspeed the Toxtricity, and the Auroraville does go down, but at this point, I don't think it matters, Lou.
No, Dracovish is just too strong in this situation, and you know, really well played by Nils to keep that in the back and keep it safe for this endgame situation where you don't have to worry about potentially being paralyzed, you don't have to worry about potentially being poisoned. Dracovish can come in, keep its speed in the rain. Even if rain hadn't been set up, that's still going to be dealing so much damage. It's Vicious Rend. It's going to be powerful.